All right.
No, that's actually a shot from inside the ISS.
Looking outside into space?
Well, no, just inside the ISS that's in space.
That's down the main chute. Okay, yeah, all right, fair enough.
Yeah.
So, in fact, you're first with app password persistence.
So this actually turned out to be very relevant to me. So the article or GitHub page here, which I guess counts as an article, talks about how there are these old methods in Outlook for if you can't enable two-factor authentication because your phone is too old, you can have an app password.
Yep.
So your app password on your Windows 8 phone can log into your Outlook. Great. Well, that's great if you're an attacker and you want to get persistence because you can just go and just avoid two-factor authentication altogether, set up an app password, and then you're always in, which is great. And the reason why this is like so relevant to what's going on is I found out, and this is known, so I can spill the beans on this. If you set up an event in Microsoft Outlook and someone else gets that event, they can forward it to someone with a Gmail account or something, and it'll look like the email came from the original person who put up the event. So you're essentially spoofing people. And so I'm like, we can spoof people. This is cool. Like maybe we should not be able to spoof our colleagues and stuff. And I sent out this, I sent out the email and I did the reverse engineering and figured out what was going on. And the response we got back was, no, this is all documented. You're supposed to be able to spoof people because it's here in the documentation that this is exactly what it's supposed to do. And just because something is working as intended doesn't mean it's not exploitable.
So, but you have to have administrator rights to create the app password, right?
No, you do not. You need to get in first. You need to get in first. So this is for persistence.
So, okay. So once you're in, okay, just for persistence, still that's pretty cool. Okay.
Yeah, that is really cool.
Well, that's a good one. All right. And so a student told me about this one, which surprised me. Intel seems to be doing pretty poorly compared to AMD, except they're making tons of money. I don't know why, because Apple's going to move away from them and stuff. But now they can't figure out how to get down to 7 nanometers. And they're going to outsource that to Taiwan, which is mighty hard for me to understand. I mean, considering the current political situation between the US and China, I would think that an American company outsourcing to a Chinese company would be a poor business move. But anyway, that's what they're doing. So
they're giving up and just outsourcing instead.
Yeah, they said they've been trying to build the 7 nanometer chips here and they can't do it, so they're going to outsource to Taiwan. So I don't know. It's kind of funny. I had Intel stock. I think I would sell it, but anyway. And then we got people shifting to cybercrime. Well, I thought everybody was already in cybercrime. Anyway.
Yes, but it is kind of amusing, and there is actually a fantastic New Yorker cartoon linked in this article of some bad actors sitting around a table and talking about how they're going to move from health and safety reasons over to cybercrime rather than just shaking down people on the street.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to see some of the statistics that are linked through here. One of the ones that stood out the most to me was that as of May 2nd, the FBI had reported an 800% increase in reported cybercrime. So that's pretty wild. The next story that I have to talk about goes into this a little bit as well. But there has been a huge increase this year with everybody trapped at home.
Oh, that's interesting. I wondered if that was true. Okay, I guess a lot of people must have miserable systems at home.
Well, I think that they do, and I think another part of it is that so many more people are working from home, so that introduces a lot more variables in and a lot more weak targets to exploit, I think, especially because people are no longer under the safe confines of their work network. They're all connecting from home or wherever, and that definitely opens up a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, I guess so. And Irvin, you got the certificates here? Yep.
Yeah, well, there will no longer be 2-year certificates. The oldest a cert will now be able to be, starting today, is 13 months.
Right. A lot of people have talked about this, that some people say certificates should really only be good for like 1 or 2 weeks. This is a step in that direction. Because all the certificate invalidation and expiration stuff has never worked worth a damn. So,
Right. So anybody who's using Let's Encrypt doesn't have to worry because those things expire every 90 days
yeah.
or so. So those people are fine. But for those who want to get a longer term certificate, it's the long term now is 13 months.
Yeah. All right. And here we got Imposter. This is
You might help if I unmute.
Oh, that explains it.
Yes. So there's nothing new in Imposter. It's a bunch of old attacks, but they're all put together. And what I like about Imposter is that it goes through the install process, and you can see how you would exactly grab passwords out of, for example, SSH. And so the way that they do this is you can essentially set the PAM auth library, and then instead of replacing like the SSH binaries, which I would imagine, which would be my first thoughts, all you have to do is replace the authentication libraries with your own, and that will let you steal the credentials off SSH. And so there's lots of little cool little tricks in this project to go over. And if people have the time, I would recommend reading over it because it'll teach you how to effectively spoof applications on a system. So I guess today, both articles so far have been about what to do once you have access and how to maintain persistence. And this is a really good project to learn more about maintaining persistence.
Yeah, these are post-exploitation, which is a big thing.
Yes.
Yeah, good. Yeah. All right. And so this, I heard another podcast about this. An enormous amount of California firefighters are convicts, which actually is pretty disturbing in itself. They work for like $2 a day, and some of them get killed and stuff, but they like it because the line of being on the fire line is much more pleasant than what happens in prison. So anyway, there's some ethical issues there, but the thing that really sucks is it's sold as a rehabilitation measure. They're learning a profession, but when they let them out of prison, they can never become a firefighter because they're a felon. So what is the point of this? And how can you say they're good enough to work on the fire line while they're in prison, but when they get out, oh no, they're not moral enough. We can't have rotten people like that around. So they're trying to finally fix this, which is changing the rules so they can get stuff like EMT certification with a prior felony. So that would seem like one answer. The other would be to stop making them do dangerous work like that while they're in prison. But anyway, it has resulted, among other things, in them not having enough firefighters to fight these current fires because they let people out of prison for coronavirus, and they were counting on those convicts to do the work. So it's there are quite a few disturbing things here.
Yeah, I mean, this is like a onion of disturbing things, layers deep. I mean, you know, it would be kind of cool to start off with if, you know, we didn't make it so that people can't get jobs once they get released from the correctional system. I mean, talk about pretty much guaranteeing recidivism. I mean, this is the prison industrial complex is something else. At one point I learned that some friends who live in a suburb of Sacramento, I was over at their house and I'm like, oh, where's your recycling bin? And they said, oh, we don't have them. Our county does single stream recycling. And I'm like, oh, well, how does that happen? And they apparently force correctional inmates to sort through everyone's trash and pull out all the recycling for a quarter an hour.
That doesn't sound like it could go horribly wrong in any way, shape, or form.
I was involved in a lawsuit like this. They were making convicts do data entry, and they were
I remember that
data entry. And so they would find out who had money, and then they'd tell their buddy on the outside who would then go kill them. So going through your trash is like considered such a privacy invasion. They don't like it when the cops do it. What a brilliant idea. You're going to find your credit card offers and your bank statements and your dirty secrets in there.
Well, and you're exposed, you know, it's so bad on so many levels because you're also exposing those inmates to horrible things. I mean, you know, like uncovered sharps and all kinds of awful, dangerous things for, you know, a quarter an hour or whatever. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
unbelievable.
And another thing that occurs to me here is, why don't you actually hire enough real firefighters? Why do you have to have this disposable pool of red shirts that you're bringing in? Anyway, but that's where we're at.
Yeah.
All right, and so now 11 million per minute to cybercrime.
Yeah. You know, and I always take these reports that come from vendors with a grain of salt, a very large grain of salt.
Yeah.
But I do think that they're interesting sometimes. You know, some of the Gartner reports are interesting as well. And some of the statistics from this I thought were interesting and related back to the other story that I linked today, and I thought that this was just interesting in the way that they had a breakdown of the different attacks that have been very popular this year so far, and a lot of as you know, as we've discussed before, a lot of coronavirus related hacks. And I thought that it was interesting how they said they caught 35 coronavirus spams per minute.
Yep. Well, I guess a lot of people have got nothing better to do.
Well, and it's nuts too. Like, you know, if you're having that many mage card attacks, you'd think that people would have patched that by now, but they totally haven't.
They totally have it. Yeah. And I saw this a bunch of stuff went down.
Yeah, on Sunday morning, a lot of stuff went down, and it was a company, a CenturyLink, who had an outage with BGP, and that just triggered massive shenanigans all around the U.S. I only caught whiff of it because I'm subscribed to DigitalOcean every time that they say when something goes down. So I saw that and I'm like, oh, but what's up this time? I thought it was Cloudflare, but nope, it was CenturyLink.
Yeah, I saw a bunch of people yelling at Cloudflare saying, hey, you're supposed to route around it. And they're like, well, when something this big goes down, there's no route around it.
I know this is a rather unpopular statement, but maybe we should replace BGP with something a bit more secure and stable.
There are movements to like have more secure BGP. This is like what Mudge said 30 years ago to Congress. Said I could take down the whole internet anytime with BGP, and it's still largely true. Yeah.
Yep, as proof of this past Sunday.
Yep.
It's crazy to me reading, like I'm doing these graduate classes, and some of the papers that we're reading are really old, some of the research studies, and it's like, how is this problem that we had in 1985 still a huge problem 35 years later?
Well, this is like a headline every month on the Register. It's 2020 and people are still using Office macros or flash attacks or whatever. A bunch of stuff is still around decades later.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the Y2K issue. They didn't just fix the errors by adding more bits to the date value. All they did was say, well, if it's 00, now it counts as 2000. And when it rolls up to, 1970 again, to 70, we're going to have these issues all over. So
because we'll still be writing everything in COBOL. I'm getting more and more into COBOL. IBM's having a conference next month about mainframes and COBOL, and I've signed up. And someone put a Twitter thread, and they said, what is the technology that will future-proof you? So in 10 years, you'll say, boy, I was really glad I learned that. And I put in COBOL. And a lot of people are saying, I hate that you're right. But the fact is, you can take all your innovation stuff and forget it. COBOL on punch cards, man, that's it.
Yeah, just certain technology is just not going away. I mean, the one thing that I've learned, especially now that I'm like really in the industry and I'm working with technology at the telegraph company that's the most high-end stuff you can ever imagine, is that everything is built on previous technology. There's no such
Yep.
thing as new technology, just evolved technology. And so you still have to deal with the fact that our computers, the way that our computers display text on the screen has to do with teletype and teleprinters.
And
Mhm.
newer is not necessarily better, especially for
Well,
boring things like financial transactions.
Except for
It-
Java. Java's clearly the best. And when it came onto the market, it revolutionized everything. And now we're all using Java.
Well, there you go. Yeah, of
Yes.
course. All right. And I think, is this one of yours, Kate?
That is one of mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so honestly, this was shocking. There's a TikTok challenge called the New Teacher Challenge, where parents, not kids, parents, are showing children images of people with disabilities and saying, "This is your new teacher." Ha 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 ha! Isn't this going to be terrible? And it is the most just disgusting thing I've ever heard of. And of course, the disability rights advocates are going absolutely, you know, uh, bonkers over this because it is wrong. I mean, this is one of the most disheartening stories of technology that I've seen this year.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of expect Russia to interfere with our elections and hacking and stuff like that, but when normal American or worldwide parents are going around and teaching their kids using technology to discriminate against people with disabilities, I mean, that's no.
Well, I'm
That's
not
the opposite of what
surprised.
technology
It
should
seems
be.
to me like it goes right along with voting for Trump, who
I
does
mean,
the same thing.
I mean,
think there's a bunch of people that do not agree with your woke enlightened values. They want things to be the way it was in 1950.
I really, I mean, how woke is it not to make fun of someone with disabilities? I mean, that's not even woke. That's like
that's like basic.
having a lucid dream.
Yeah, we're just, being a basic, decent human,
I'd put it in the same category as racial bigotry, which is really on the upswing. It appears to be 40% of America is on the other side of that issue.
That's true.
Yeah, it seems like we're backsliding in these areas. Like it seems worse than it was in the 90s, which is mind-blowing to me.
But anyway, I really like this woman who is bold enough to put out her picture and say, all right, guys, get over being mad at me for looking this way. I like that.
Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, she looks fine, in all honesty. Anyone who looks at her and says like, hey, this is going to be your new teacher, haha. I mean, it's just wrong on so many levels.
But I like her attitude. That's why, that Jerry Falwell guy that had a threesome with his wife and now he's all ruined. And he said, he's lying about it. And I was like, well, lying about it makes you sort of worth it. If you just said, okay, we have an open marriage, then I'd be okay with it, right? Okay, fine. But anyway.
Yeah, just be okay with yourselves. You know, love yourself and don't worry about what other people say about you. But obviously don't go around making fun of people with disabilities in front of your children. That's not okay, people.
Right.
That's not teaching them the values I would like them to get. Yeah. Anyway, and so there we got more stuff about masks and the virus, which I thought is pretty interesting. So they did some kind of test and determined that masks are in fact extremely useful, which I think the rest of the world knew, but now we have like some scientific evidence showing that if you catch coronavirus, it matters how big a dose you get. If you get a small number of particles floating in the air, then you get a small case that your immune system can cope with. It's if you get too much of it that you get these really horrible ones where you go in. So the face covering, even if it blocks, like 3/4 of the droplets in the air, that's enough to make you a lot safer. And the other thing is, if you do get a bad case, it really messes you up, messes your brain up and your heart and your lungs, and often permanently. And so that's why it's extremely troubling that Trump had his super spreader event with no masks at the Republican National Convention. And they said this is his new strategy to just let it spread and try herd immunity, because that worked so well in Britain and Sweden and stuff and that's, as usual, Trump changes the medical advisors whenever they don't agree with him. And his answer is always to just do nothing and to have people lie about it.
How do we think herd immunity is a thing? We have confirmed cases of reinfection now.
That's another issue, of course. Yes. Well, the point is Trump just wants to pretend it's gone, and he'll just fire everybody and replace them with quislings that will go along with any stupid thing he says. And apparently 40% of Americans will follow him right off the cliff like lemmings. It's because they love bigotry so much that is what they really think is right in the world, is to have a bigot, and it's okay if he kills everybody as long as he's bigoted. That's the fundamental American value they respect. And of course, that was the fundamental American value from the start. It founded on slavery, and before that, genocide against the Indians. So they are factually correct that a fundamental American principle, what made America great in the first place, was genocide and bigotry. But some of us would like to change that. But there's a considerable number of us that do not want to change that. So we really have a fundamental disagreement here.
Fun.
Well, yeah, but that's where we are. And the next election will make a really big difference, I think.
Yes, it will. We should talk about that,
Well,
because
here's some of your, here's some
you may
here, yeah.
you may be surprised to discover there's some funny business afoot.
Yep.
So, first and most interesting one to me actually was a story that came out late last night that I kind of had to add on here at the end because it's a big deal.
The Russian one?
Yeah.
Here's a translation of the page. Yeah.
Yes, what a surprise. I'm sure you will all be shocked to discover that there has been evidence of Russian interference in our elections.
No way.
I know.
Stop the presses.
Well, I thought it was just propaganda. I didn't think they actually messed with the voting data.
Right. Well, they did actually mess
Apparently.
with the data.
Well, what they did was steal it and sell it back, right?
Sure. That's all they're doing is selling voter data on the dark web. I'm sure that they're not doing anything else. And this is totally okay, but it's kind of interesting that this happens at a coincidental time with a couple other of events. So rightfully so, the government, certain officials in our government saw this stuff happening and they're like, this is a problem. Maybe we should do something about this and start investigating it. Strangely enough, one of the other stories that happened, so there are two that are sort of connected to this. So one is the fact that Barr removed a pretty high-ranking DOJ official without any kind of explanation and replaced him with a political pick just now who's very kind of new and inexperienced to this executive position with no real explanation whatsoever. Interestingly enough, at the time that the announcement was also made that Trump is creating this task force of a joint effort between the DOJ and Homeland Security to investigate all of these left-wing terrorists that are here to abolish the suburbs. And it's pretty interesting. All this stuff is happening right now.
And they also decided to stop telling Congress updates about election security.
Yeah, well, what could go wrong?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's abundantly clear that Trump is rigging the election, turning off the post office and everything else. It's like, it's out in the open now. The whole GOP National Convention was blatantly illegal. And they said, like a street gang, it's like a fun thing among them to like brag about how we're breaking the law and getting away with it.
Yeah, no one seems to care. That's what blows my mind. This is all out in the open. It's not like, in the time of Nixon when it was all underground. It's all out there, but people just don't care.
Right.
Yes, the Republicans just don't care whether it's legal or illegal. The only thing they care about is bigotry. That means it's worth putting up with everything else to put the minorities in their place. That is the only issue I think left in the Republican Party. But anyway, here's the code word for it. The Antifa left are attacking us. That's the current code word to hide bigotry. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I guess we need to, I guess the strategy is to unite against some manufactured bogeyman and
Well, you're uniting against black people.
Yeah, deflect.
And then you're
attention
covering it
away-
with like a thin veneer of pretending it's something else.
Mhm.
Right.
Anyway, that's why I thought this is great. This video from the 40s explaining,
Yeah, it's classic.
Friends, I'm just an average American. But I'm an American American. And some of the things I see in this country of ours make my blood boil. I see Negroes holding jobs that belong to me and you.
so anyway, was written, of course, against Hitler by our government in the 40s, and now our government is totally on the other side of this issue. So it is indeed a shocking collapse of the American system that we're living through. Anyway, so and then we got looks like Amazon. Oh yeah, I thought this is amazing. Hanging phones in trees.
Yeah. So there's in the gig economy, there's people who are now able to do the last leg of delivering packages, and they can use their own cars instead of using Amazon cars or whatnot. So in order to be the first to get that, because they're going by who's the closest, people are putting phones in the trees and stuff near the distribution center so that when the algorithm looks at, all right, who's closest to deliver, there's all these people that are all lined up and ready to go.
That's
You know,
crazy.
It's just phones on the trees, right?
Yeah, it's a good hack. And it reminds me of like the stock market traders that move their data center closer to New York to have less milliseconds in the wire so they can be the first one to place the stock bids.
Yep, that's exactly the same thing.
And they do it in China. They would have somebody built like a board with like 100 SIM cards to be like 100 cell phones, so they can do more Uber rides, and they can like pretend to be like the passengers and have fake Uber rides and everything.
Yeah.
There's
Same
people
mindset.
get it creative, you know.
Well, they have to.
Yeah. Well, all right. Any more comments?
No.
I'll stop the recording then.